If you're a software engineer or thinking about becoming a software engineer, you may have heard these terms before: front-end, back-end, full stack. In this video, we're going to talk about what the differences are and which engineer you might like to be. Now, before we get started, if you like this content or these videos and you want to see more of them, please go ahead and smash the like button and subscribe to my channel, as well as get notifications about new videos so you can stay up to date whenever I release a new video. Getting right into the topic: front-end, back-end, and full stack. These are all different sections of the stack that we refer to when we're building out technologies. That is to say, there is a front end that is the user interface, the user experience, the way that the user interacts with the service. Then there is the back end, that is to say, the service itself and the way that it handles requests from the user. And then there is full stack, which refers to both the front and the back end. So typically a front end engineer takes care of just the UI and UX. The backend engineer primarily focuses on the service itself and creating APIs that front ends can consume so that they can show an experience to the user. And then a full stack engineer is typically a combination of them, typically leaning towards backend or front end. So a lot of jobs you'll see full stack, but with an emphasis on backend, or full stack with an emphasis on front end. More often than not, most full stack jobs are basically backend jobs with a little bit of front end sprinkled in as well. You might be thinking, which job should I get? Which one should I focus on for my career? And can I switch later on? And so to answer those questions, the first one is, which one should I focus on? The truth is, whichever one you can get a job in. So for me, getting a job as a front-end engineer kind of just fell into my lap. When I was at code school at Hack Reactor, no one really wanted to work on the front end because everyone was very self-conscious about the way things looked. They said if it doesn't look professional, then people aren't going to want to hire me. So if I do back-end stuff, I can kind of hide my lack of design and polish behind, my services that I built up instead. And I was actually interested in back-end because I thought this is more of the real kind of, computer science work. This is like kind of stuff that I can scale my career with. And I'm worried that front-end is going to pigeonhole me into just being a web developer. Well, fast forward 3 years, and being a front-end engineer was a great decision, I think, for me, and actually I think for a lot of people. The nice thing about doing front-end is that you get very immediate results in terms of your code having effects on screen that you can perceive. And while back-end is very important, and I enjoy back-end, front-end definitely is very easy to showcase your work. So if you have a resume or a portfolio and you want to show work that you did, it's very easy to visualize because you can literally just show the service that you built. Now, if you're a back-end engineer, this is where you are going to run into some issues. While your work, you can argue, translates to different areas of computer science other than just building a website or a web service, it's very hard to demonstrate visually the work that you've done. And so a lot of times I see backend engineers who are still putting websites, but highlighting that they built the recommendation algorithm or the search algorithm, or that they built out the database that supplies user information, and giving a visual representation of that through the web. Now, that's not entirely accurate because it's a little misleading. It's kind of showing like you built the whole website. And then you may get into trouble later when they're testing you on front-end stuff and you're not as strong there. That's not always the case. But coming back to the original point, again, whichever one you can get a job in is really the one that you should do. I personally love that I did front end as my initial focus. 3 years into it, I'm still finding new things to discover and optimize and build and to find demand for in the industry. I've had a couple of conversations with different engineers who are higher up in their career, and the sky's the limit, really. If you're worried that front end's going to pigeonhole you into not being paid as much as a back end or DevOps engineer, that's really not the case. There's always going to be people who need world-class UI and UX experience. And for instance, I know someone who works for Toyota in the Bay Area and was making over $400,000 a year total comp. Netflix regularly pays their employees who are front-end engineers in excess of $250,300,000, depending on their title and years of experience and the area they're working in. These are not things to focus on in terms of where your career should go, because ultimately, when we look at our jobs and our careers, we should not be looking at how do I maximize just my salary based on position, but also how do I maximize my salary based on career length. And so if you can start working today as a front-end engineer, or if you have to wait 2 years to get started as a back-end or DevOps engineer, That is 2 years of pay that you are giving up. And in my case, my first job paid me $90,000 a year. That is almost $200,000 a year that I am giving up with the hope that I might make another $20,000 or $30,000 a year when I start as a backend engineer in 2 years. Again, it's not worth it. What's worth it is getting started. And if you're worried, you can switch later. Now, talking a little bit more about backend engineers. Backend engineers sometimes can work to your advantage because there are a lot of stacks that people don't want to support anymore that still a lot of the internet runs on. For instance, we have a very hard time hiring PHP developers at Thrive Market. And this is solely because not a lot of people want to work in PHP anymore. We still find PHP developers. They're worth their weight in gold because they're so important. But they are very hard to come by. And so a lot of companies now, what they'll do is they'll try to move towards more modern stacks. And a lot of times they'll even move towards JavaScript-based stacks because then the transition from a front end to a backend engineer is not as difficult. Yes, there are patterns and understandings of how APIs work and REST and GraphQL and all this other stuff that, there's not just like a book that tells you exactly how to do everything. But you will learn these things by working with other people who have worked in those systems for years, even if they worked on a Java or PHP backend before. So backend can also be very lucrative and can work out for you well, but you may also be forced onto stacks that you might not want to work on. While frontend in general, for the most part, I'm seeing a lot of companies are embracing React, moving towards new frameworks like Next. And it's a very exciting time, I think, to be a front-end engineer where we've kind of gone to this client-side focus of React, and we're coming back to the server-side focus with frameworks like Next that are just super interesting and popping up. And it's like all this really exciting stuff built around React, which is just such a fun and pleasurable framework to work with. It's a really exciting time to be a front-end engineer. Now, let's talk about sort of the dark horse here, which is the full stack engineer. Now, more often than not, when you see the term full stack, what you're seeing is, like I said, a backend engineer who will also be responsible for some of the front end. And let's talk about why that is. A lot of languages that are server-side languages in the past also supported rendering Markdown of some sort into HTML and CSS before transmitting it to your page. So Amazon uses a build tool where when you request a website, basically it pulls all the information that it needs in terms of making an API request, in terms of getting styles and everything else, and it muxes everything down to HTML and CSS with minimal JavaScript. And they've been using this system for, I think, like 20 years now, which is part of why, a lot of people find it difficult to work with Amazon's stack when they work at the company, at least so I've heard. But that's why a lot of your job really is a backend engineer, because what you're doing is you're maintaining this tooling that exists that was built years before modern tools like Webpack and Gulp and Rollup existed that handle a lot of this for you. And a lot of server-side technologies that we use, like server-side rendering with React or Next, existed, or the static build optimizations that we have now. These things just didn't exist back then, so they kind of built their own. And now those are outdated, but these systems, these legacy systems, depend on it, and so they need backend engineers mostly to maintain that, while knowing enough front end to be able to create new features as well. Coming back to like which one you should choose, again, the one that gives you a job, because ultimately at the end of the day, your goal is to get employed as a software engineer and to make money and to support yourself. Now, a couple years down the road, you might be doing front end. You're kind of sick of working on React features. You want to start working on something else. Absolutely, you can change jobs. A lot of people think if you're a front end engineer, you are a front end engineer for life. And if you're a back end engineer, you're a back end engineer for life. That just isn't true. I have seen front end engineers become back end engineers. I have seen back end engineers become data engineers. I have seen front end engineers also become site reliability engineers. My tech lead at Bethesda moved on to being an SRE and loves what he does. And it's just following the path that your career takes you in. And so for me, a lot of my work has been focused on building front-end features, but I've been focused more and more now on building out our new Next.js app. I've also been focused a lot on helping to maintain our application in our DevOps pipeline. And that's been a lot of interesting stuff for me. I think site reliability engineering might be a direction I want to go in with my career in the future. But at the time, the way I do things now pays me very well. And I'm not really in a hurry to change because I have so many other engineers that I get to teach a lot of what I've learned. And I get to also then get experience managing other engineers as well, which is another exciting part of my career that I'm happy to work on now. So I hope that this video was really helpful for you. If you have any other questions about front-end, back-end, full-stack engineers, I know I probably missed a lot of things here, but this is just the first of many videos to come as I help all of you on your way to becoming a better software engineer and having a better career. Again, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. If you click the notification bell, you'll get my new videos when they come out every week. And again, leave a comment down below with any other questions that you have. A lot of my video topics come from viewers like you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.